You've heard and seen all the hype around electric vehicles lately, and maybe you're interested in one, but still a little bit reserved about taking the plunge. Maybe it's the range anxiety, maybe it's the suspect charging network. Whatever the reason, a vehicle like this, a plug-in hybrid, may be a perfect stepping stone for you because it has a small electric range, but also a gas engine for when you want to go further. This is the 2024 Rav4 Prime, and today we're here to find out, are there any downsides to this? And we're going to do that by taking a look outside, inside. I'm going to show you some of the features, technology, and powertrain of this vehicle. We're going to try and cram a bike in the back to see how usable or not it is. And then last but not least, we're going to take it out on the road to see what it's like to drive. Starting first with the exterior, this should look familiar because this vehicle came out in one form or another around 2018. So it's been out for a while. I would love to hear what you guys think about the looks of this thing down in the comments below. It's very angular, even extending to the side profile. The wheel wells are angular instead of round like most other vehicles. And depending on who you are, you may like or dislike that. It certainly has the cladding around the wheel well that everyone is doing today. And whether you like the looks or not, I will say that this color silver sky metallic isn't exactly doing this vehicle any favors. It does have a decent two-tone look with the black on top and silver, but still you have to step up to a higher trim level to get some more interesting colors. Of course, the big news here with the Prime is this plug-in hybrid powertrain. This is a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated engine coupled with a couple electric motors to combine for about 302 horsepower. It also has a 18 kilowatt hour battery pack, and that is useful for around 42 miles of range on all electric only. So we'll be curious to see what that's like out here in the real world, whether you can actually get 42 miles. Either way, this vehicle can be all electric or can go into gas mode. So it does offer you that flexibility and you can drive it just like any other car. Four wheels and tires with this Prime XSE model. We're at 19-inch wheels on Yokohama Avid GT tires. Happy to see they didn't go too crazy and throw 20s or 21s on here. We still have a pretty decent sized sidewall with this 55 series tire. The base model gets a 17-inch wheel, so you're going to have an even more meaty tire on that one. But out on the road, outside of the ride with this decent sized tire, I am to be curious what the noise level is like, because sometimes on these more fuel efficient vehicles they can have a higher tire noise, so that's something we're going to want to check out on the road. When you hop inside the Rav4 Prime, you're greeted with these fantastic seats. Pretty supportive for the class, and also a nice material. They're a leatherette of some sort, some fake leather, but they're nice and soft and supple. Good support, good lumbar support for me with a crummy back. And I think they look really cool with the red stitching and the red piping on there. They're also heated and cooled, which is nice, operated through the same interface, physical buttons here, 1 through 3. And it's kind of neat. They give you different colors when you're on the cooled seats versus the heated seats. That's a nice little touch. The other thing that's nice is the HVAC controls are all physical, so you have a dial here and all of the buttons for defrost and everything are physical. You don't have to interact with the touchscreen, which is nice. Speaking of the touchscreen, volume knob, which is great on the left, better than the Prius that they for some reason put it on the right. The infotainment itself is pretty straightforward. It is basically what Toyota is using in all their products now. Maybe not my favorite because it's slow to boot up. That's a bit annoying, but everything else, it's very simple. The menu structure is always here on the left for you. You can switch between your music to your navigation, and of course you have the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which you're going to use. The only downsides that I could say, or the nitpicks that I can have about this interior, is the build quality is okay. I think it's basically on par for a regular Toyota, but as we start to get a lot more expensive like this vehicle is, it starts to feel a little bit cheaper. The materials and also I don't know if you can see this in the video, but I can move a lot of this stuff around. Now, it passes the push test. When you push on things, there's no creaks, but man, a lot of this stuff kind of has a lot of give to it. And that's in contrast to that CRV that I drove recently, which just had, it wasn't a step up in build quality, but maybe a half step. So when you're starting to get into a more expensive price range, this starts to feel a little bit low scale. But overall, it's extremely usable. I would like to see a little more in terms of storage here. This center console is relatively narrow compared to some of the competitors. And when you try and put a bigger drink bottle in these door cards or in the center console, it's not the greatest. But digital gauge cluster, all the buttons on the steering wheel are super straightforward. So I love the usability of this thing. And the other thing I love is these back seats. I could sit behind myself, no problem, have plenty of headroom. And that's something, of course, that you want in a CUV because you're anticipating at least moving some adults around, right? Because why else would you buy a CUV? Overall, great execution. It just feels maybe like this is slightly dated given that this car has been out for so long. Let's attempt to throw a bike in the back of this thing to see if it is as usable as we hope. Given my recent lack of success fitting my 29er mountain bike in the all-new CRV, I didn't go into this test with high hopes. What I was very surprised to find, however, was that despite the CRV being dimensionally bigger and having more cargo capacity, the slightly wider rear opening in the Rav4 actually proves it to be better in this specific test. Sure, you'll have more space in the CRV overall, but if you have bigger, bulkier items, the rear hatch opening in this Rav4 itself may be a big factor. Oh, and while I have you, if you enjoyed the bike test, I'd love it if you left a comment below and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss future videos. As we set out in the Rav4 Prime, it's very obvious immediately when you drive this car for a short period of time that you're spending all the money on this powertrain. That's really what the joy of this is. You get 42 miles of electric range. You also get 300 combined horsepower. Right now, I'm in EV only mode, and what's nice is you can choose what mode you want to be in. Now, obviously, if you run out of electricity, you can no longer be in EV mode, but if you charge it and you want to keep that charge until you get to the city and you're going to drive on the highway, you can make it go into gas engine mode where it's a little more efficient. And then when you get to the city, you can switch it to electric mode. So you have that flexibility, which is really nice. But of course, with the EV mode, you get all the benefits of an electric vehicle, which is quiet, very quiet, instant torque, and very smooth, right? There's no gears. Now, of course, this has a CVT transmission, so there's really no gears anyways, but you don't hear the engine revving up and sounding like a weed eater. So in electric mode right now, and it's rated at 42 miles of range, but realistically, especially in the cold, especially up here at altitude, you're not going to see anywhere near that amount of range. But it's nice to know that if you have a shorter commute, I would say under 30 miles round trip, you'll probably be fine. And especially if you can somehow, preheat the car, turn the car on while it's still charged at home and get this thing warmed up, because heating electric vehicles takes a ton of energy. Also, the colder the battery, the less range you're going to get. So all the EV things apply, but the nice part is when you're in EV mode, of course, it drives like an electric vehicle. I'm going to switch it over now into auto mode, which is it's going to do its best to use both whenever it sees fit. And what I'll say is, with this combined 302 horsepower between gas and electric motor, it's actually pretty quick. When you're in just EV mode, especially going up a mountain, it doesn't have, it's got torque, but it doesn't have a ton of horsepower to kind of pull you up. But the second you combine them, you have the electric motor and the gas engine, this thing moves. So 302 horsepower is actually really great in this thing. And the other thing I'll say, the benefit of having this decent sized electric motor and the gas engine is that the problem I have with a lot of CVTs is the fact that you put your foot down like this, and there's traditionally a delay while, you know, the CVT figures things out and gets things spinning up, and then you move. But with the electric motors, you get that instant torque. So there's really good throttle response, actually. There is a bit of a initial hit from the electric motor, slight pause, and then the engine comes on. But it's not to the point of being annoying or anything like that. What's nice is that you do get that instant hit of power, and you don't have to wait once again for that CVT. So the whole drivetrain, I mean, the whole powertrain drivetrain is really what you're paying the money for here. It's very apparent that Toyota has done such an excellent job of calibrating this. It just drives like a normal car. And that's really the best thing that you can say for a hybrid, plug-in hybrid type vehicle. You don't want it to be kind of messy or different. Now, how about the rest of the car? Well, it's all very good, but keep in mind that this platform has been around since about 2018. So this is probably the last year for this. I believe next year in 2025, the new Rav4 will be coming out, the all-new one. And I just feel like in some ways that it's a bit dated. So the driving experience is relatively quiet, but not as quiet as the CRV I drove. There's a bit of road noise, and it could just be the tires. The wind noise is relatively low, but the road noise at highway speeds is definitely more noticeable than you would see in the CRV. And the other thing I'll mention, like I talked about in the interior segment, is the build quality. It's good, don't get me wrong, but I think it's a half step below the new CRV. And a lot of that could be because the new CRV is once again all new, and this car is about 5 years old. So the rigidity, you know, the body structure, these companies are coming such a long way every time. And of course, every time they come out with a new model, there's more adhesives, it's more structurally rigid. And you just sort of feel it in this. This drives perfectly good. Like, once again, I don't want to say it's a bad driving car, but there is a little more head bob. The CRV is a little more planted. And keep in mind, I'm splitting hairs here. I'm really splitting hairs here because I keep bringing up the CRV. It's a natural competitor. Both of these are excellent choices. The suspension in this is a little more softer sprung than the CRV, which is great for soaking up bumps. I really enjoy that. The only other dynamic thing that I can nitpick on this personally is the brakes. The brakes are not linear, and there's clearly a not a disconnect, but maybe a slight calibration issue between the handoff of regenerating braking with the electric motor and using the actual physical brakes, because the pedal's not linear, and then it just sort of locks up. There's zero feel on the pedal, so you start to go deeper into the pedal, and then it just locks up. So it's a bit abrupt from the braking, and I'm sure it's something that you would kind of get used to and drive around. I just personally don't like that. I like more linear brakes on a vehicle, and the CRV offers that. And once again, I think that is mostly because of the electric motor regeneration physical brake handoff. Not the end of the world, nitpicking here. And that's really what I have to do with this car, is because it's so good. I would highly recommend this thing, but when it comes to coming up with downsides, you really have to think about it. Outside of the brakes, I think the infotainment is pretty good. Toyota should be probably updating this. I prefer personally the infotainment in the CRV. It's just like native Google Maps, and the way it's laid out. This has a long startup to it, which I don't really enjoy. When you start the car, you just want to go, and it kind of takes a while to boot up. But what I will say is the fact that the hatch opening is a little bigger and you can fit a really big bike back there is a huge plus to this versus the CRV. And that's really up to you what you prioritize. Now, the last thing I'll say about the Rav4 is that this is a fantastic vehicle, but I'm nitpicking here because of the price. This is base price $43,000. The model I'm in is $47,000. And that's if you can even get one. These are so popular that dealers are marking them up. Toyota's not making a whole ton, probably a limitation due to the batteries. But it's just when it gets closer to that $50,000, I just expect a little more. And that's why I'm being a little bit harsh on things like the build quality. When you get into a $50,000 car, you kind of expect a little bit more. But overall, I can see why so many people buy these vehicles. They just work. They're easy to get along with. It drives like a normal vehicle. And it's just such a perfect segue for someone who eventually wants to get into an electric vehicle, because you can essentially try it out, right? You can say, I'm interested in an electric vehicle. How much range do I actually need? I'm going to start with this 42 miles and see how much the gas engine kicks in. And then that will help me determine, is an electric vehicle right for me? Now, obviously, electric vehicles are going to have 6 times easily the amount of electric range as this. But, you get to see, am I using this a lot on your road trips? Do I actually need that additional electric range? So personally, I think this is what the government should be pushing instead of full electric cars. It's a stepping stone to get people into EVs, to get them a little bit more used to it. And it's going to save you money long term if you hold it by being able to charge every day and not use very much gas. So as I mentioned, overall excellent vehicle, would highly recommend it. It just feels, it's like it's getting slightly old and it's definitely due for a refresh. And personally, I like the driving dynamics of the CRV more. I like the build quality a little bit more, but this little bit bigger hatch is kind of a big deal, at least to me. So take with that what you will. You have to prioritize, what you need. And of course, Honda doesn't even offer a plug-in hybrid like this. So if you want a plug-in hybrid, this is an excellent choice. Appreciate you guys for watching the video. If you made it this far, thank you very much. Consider hitting that subscribe and like button, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm gonna go enjoy this beautiful day out here in Colorado. See ya.